We had an experience with a cow. We got charged by a cow.
Like a real cow? Like
yeah,
a
that
beef
sounds
cow?
really silly, but no, like a heifer, a female cow who was the dominant one in the group, and they had calves. And I thought I was seeing things at first because she wouldn't let us walk by her. I was hunting, or I was scouting a property I'd scouted before that Adelaide likes, and so I thought I'd take her just for a scout. And it chased us, and I thought, surely I'm just being an overprotective mom. But she chased us over a barbed wire fence, and so we got put out of the property, and we had to find a new way in. And you ever tried shuffling a baby through a barbed wire fence?
No,
not fun. I'm April Vokey, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
This is episode number 25 with April Vokey. If you are a fly fisherman, you probably know who April Vokey is, and particularly if you're into fishing rivers like the Dean in British Columbia, she's a fixture up there. And she also has a very popular podcast called Anchored with April Vokey. She has incredible guests and a really big audience, and that is well-deserved because the podcast is very well done, very high quality, very good guests, and April herself is a very good interviewer. She asked me to be on her podcast, and I asked her to be on my podcast, and it just worked out great. We met here in Orlando. We're both here at the ICAST show, which is the annual industry fishing show. Brings a lot of people to town. And April and I found a chance to sit down and do both of these podcasts. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think that you will too. Great conversations. Hey, thanks so much for all the emails you've been sending. Been getting them, been reading them, and fantastic. Got some great suggestions for guests, some of which I have tracked down, and others I am looking for or trying to organize our schedules so that we can sit down too. That email address is podcast@saltwaterexperience.com. Drop me an email. Let me know what you think about these podcasts. If you're listening, if you got suggestions, good, bad, indifferent, just good to hear from you guys. Also, what other news do we have? This week, I got to sit down with a bunch of fishermen and got some really good people. Today's podcast is April Vokey. Next week, Robert Trossett, 238 world records. Got to check that one out. Then one that you have been asking for a lot through the email. I get a lot of requests for C.A. Richardson. No wonder, because the guy, he's awesome. I've known C.A. for a long time, and he is really one of the good guys in the industry. He is a remarkable teacher. He has a great show. And he's just an all-around good guy. So I enjoyed that conversation. And then a departure from the saltwater. We go back to the freshwater with FLW Tour Pro Brian Latimer, who just has a great attitude. Really like Brian. So I know you're going to enjoy these episodes that are headed your way. This particular episode is brought to you by Waypoint TV. Waypoint TV has, oh man, God, the tide's turned. Everything's changing. All the producers want to put their stuff on Waypoint TV because, man, that's where you guys are watching. And you know why you're watching there? Because there's great quality content. It's free, and it's anywhere and everywhere you want it when you want it. And what I mean by that is you can go and watch Waypoint TV as a regular website by typing in, well, that's easy for me to say. You can type in waypointtv.com and use it like a regular website, or you can go to your app store on your phone, on your tablet, on your smart TV, go to the app store, search Waypoint TV, and you will be able to get the best quality hunting and fishing content. And that is growing every single day. And guess what? It's free. I already told you that. But did you realize that it's free? Because it is. It's free to you. So go check it out. I think you're really going to like it. Now, some of the emails that we've gotten, one of them had a good suggestion, said, hey, why don't you have somebody interview you? And let's hear your story. So you know what? I did that by going on April Vokey's Anchored podcast. So if you want to hear April Vokey interview me, watch for her to release that episode in the next few weeks. And that will be as easy as going to iTunes or anywhere that you find podcasts. Search Anchored with April Vokey. And pretty soon, the one with me will be up there, and you can hear my story in a way that I don't think I've ever told it before. So that should be a good episode with her. And want to acknowledge the fan of the week. This is coming from iTunes. This guy did a great job, and I want to thank you very much, 912 Angler, because you gave us a nice review, and you also rated it 5 stars. So the subject line is Outstanding Podcast, and the review is, Tom Rowland interviews people from all walks of life and does an excellent job in facilitating their stories. There's always something new that I can learn each and every time I listen. From the fishing and hunting world to everyday motivation, Tom covers all the bases. Can't say enough about this podcast. Definitely 5 stars for sure. Thanks, man. That really means a lot. I'm really glad that you're enjoying it and so many other people are enjoying it. It really means a lot to me. Now, April Vokey, coming up right now. I really think you're going to enjoy this one. I certainly did. All right, April Vokey. Very nice to be sitting across from you. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
I really had a good time. You're a very good interviewer.
Oh, thank you. I didn't actually say anything, I don't think, in that interview.
It's funny because I don't talk much. And if my wife would be like, you talk for like 2 hours without stopping? Well, I mean, that's one of the things that happens when you're a fishing guide is you're out there talking all day long and entertaining people. And then you come home and your wife's like, oh, how was work? And you're like, pretty good. You just can't possibly. You've talked so much.
Yeah, no, but you're great because you segue. I didn't even have to ask the next question because you just brought me there.
Oh,
it's perfect. And actually, you are. Yeah, thank you. You're an excellent story. I can't wait to share that with my listeners.
Well, good. You're also an excellent story. So I have done a little bit of homework. I came across.
I'm scared of what your homework is going to be.
No. It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, this is one of those shows where it's like a gotcha kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where I'm gonna
can't
ask
get
you
me,
some.
But
okay.
you can try. I love
try.
the nonsense that's on the internet. Now, a couple questions first, because now that I'm in the hot seat, do you censor these? Like, can I just talk?
You can talk any way you want to.
Okay.
I have no sponsors right now, so there's nobody to get mad at us. But I think that's what the podcast is all about. It's all about just being yourself and learning and not putting on any sort of mask. That's what I like.
That's what I like about it too. It's been the best platform for me.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people didn't know.
We're going to get there.
Yeah, let's do it. You take the reins.
We're going to get there.
I'm the guest this time.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So, I know a little bit about you, but I want you to paint the picture, not deeply, about how, I mean, basically, from what I know about you, you grew up in a family where your parents were fishermen a little bit, not hunters. Is that correct so far?
Yes, no. Fishermen. No, not fishermen. Yes, no. Mom, no. Although she liked being outside. She tossed a line once or twice.
Yeah.
Dad and I would go on, as a family trip, we'd go troll worms around the lake. So fishermen, they wouldn't call themselves fishermen, but technically they went once a year.
But they exposed you to it.
They exposed me to the river and to being outside. But yeah, I guess so. Dad put a rod in my hands.
Yeah.
My neighbors probably exposed me more to it.
Okay. So, but coming from a family where fishing isn't the centerpiece, let's
just
say
not
that.
Even close, right?
So it's not the centerpiece, even outdoors, not necessarily the centerpiece. Is that fair to say or not?
I don't know. That's a really good question. My parents were all about taking us to the river. And so we did spend weekends going out, getting out of the city. But no, I wouldn't say that the outdoors was a huge center, but it was a big part of our life. Like, this is back in the day where, obviously, and I'm not old, but I'm 35. So this is before the internet and we didn't have games and we were comfortable, but we didn't come from a lot of money. So we didn't spend a lot of money going and doing much. We found our entertainment, playing in parks and going to the river. And
this is in BC? Is that where?
Yeah. And that's the other thing, to be fair, being in British Columbia, how do you not make your province your entertainment when it's just one of the most beautiful places on earth?
Right.
So I think we were outdoorsy people, but not in the sense of what my listener would assume to be an outdoorsy person.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does a little girl develop this love for the outdoors that you obviously did?
Yeah. Well, my parents definitely helped me to love being outside. they made it so much fun, right? Like Dad and I would look in the rivers and we'd look for fish, and Dad taught me how to skip stones, and Mom would take us for walks. And my mom was always, actually looking back, I'm kind of eating my words because, I guess we were really outdoorsy in that my mom was a horseback rider, and we spent all of our time at the barn. Actually, I feel like a real asshole right now because we did. We spent a ton of time because of the horses.
Yeah.
So we were always at the barn, and my mom was pro. I mean, she used to be one of the judges in the horse shows, and she used to show, and she had her own horse. And so I obviously had a horse, and I'd spend all my weekends, shoveling shit out of stables. And that was my time outside. But there's all these, there would be like a little like creek thing that went by the barn. Granted, it was usually full of like manure and it had like oil spots on the top. But, I'd go catching frogs and salamanders, and you just pair that with the time that Dad and I would do the occasional lake fishing trip. And it just all kind of comes together. And one time they took us out to the Chilliwack River. Well, they took us out there all the time. But one time there was this big dead salmon. And my parents explained, the migration. And because my mom was a Girl Guide leader, a Brownie leader, and I was also a Girl Guide, we'd do all of these. I know I'm jumping everywhere, so just bear with me. We'd go to see fish spawn. Like, do you guys have that here? Not here in Florida,
but I can see that. I could see how that would be something like at the bottom of a dam or the salmon ladders or something.
Yep. Yeah. And so we'd go look at that. And so it all kind of clicked. So we go to the Chilliwack. Mom and Dad show me this big dead Chinook salmon. I'd already seen a little bit of the salmon migration. My parents explained it further to me. And because I'd already done the fishing with Dad, it all clicked that, okay, I can catch that fish too. And that's really how it all started.
Yeah. And then fishing becomes this overwhelming obsession for you.
Yeah, I don't know if it was fishing or if it was the water. I really loved the water. I just loved everything about water.
Yeah,
and it didn't matter if it
me
was
too.
rain or you drive over a bridge, and I was the girl with my head cranked, just trying desperately to see what was down there. And my parents were aware of that, and they'd stop and we'd get out and we'd go under the bridge and have a picnic. And I guess they really were really influential from that stance. But I just loved the water. The fish were secondary to the water.
So, okay. So you develop this interest and then you actually pursue it. How did
Yeah.
you know that from what have gathered, the next thing where you actually do this professionally is as a sturgeon guide? Is that correct?
Yeah, professionally, yeah. But I mean, there's a time, and in hearing your story, I know that you understand this. There is a time between when you decide you're going to do it professionally and then when you actually do it professionally. And so for me, I was fishing, as much as I could. I just
What
loved
kind of fishing?
salmon fishing.
Okay.
Yeah, because sturgeon fishing, you typically have to have a boat. I did do some sturgeon fishing offshore later, but to start, I was taking my spinning rod and going out and salmon fishing, and doing okay, but losing more fish than bringing to hand.
Yeah.
And I met this guy on the river, and he was older, and I'm sure everyone who's heard my story right now is like, "Oh my God, please don't make us hear about Dave Puffer again."
We're gonna move on from that pretty quickly. But this guy was very influential to you.
Yeah, and he became my fishing buddy, and that was it. I was a teen. I've had a fishing buddy in his 60s, and the rest was really history. And he and I did some sturgeon fishing offshore, and eventually I was just I happened to stumble across some fly fishermen out there, and I was across the river, so we didn't talk. But I came home and had the same moment you did, where I said, I had a moment, like that was what I had to do, and I was just in a daze about it. I had to make that my living, but I didn't know how.
Right.
So what do? You get damn good at it. That's what you do.
Yeah. But while you're trying to get really good at it, you become a sturgeon guide?
Well, no, that came later. So, I was out, I knew I wanted to do it professionally when I was 18. And so I was putting in the time every day to be a decent fly fisher. And I was fly fishing one day when I was, I think, 21. And this guy came up to me and he said, I've heard about you because word travels fast on the river. And I'd been working the occasional day a week at a fly shop just to be able to get gear at a discount. And he said, "Do you want a guide for me?" And I said, "Well, sure. What is it?" He said, "Well, half sturgeon, half salmon guiding." I said, "Yeah, why not?" I was a horrible sturgeon guide. Like, absolutely tragic.
Really?
Yeah, horrible.
Did you not like it?
No, I liked it. It was okay. It was a different group of people.
Yeah.
People wanted to drink on the boat. I had some real aggressive clients.
Huh.
I'm not a great boats person. I mean, I can run a boat, but
Are these jet boats? Or?
Yeah, they're jet boats, but like I didn't know anything about boats. They literally gave me a boat, and a week later I'm guiding. Well,
that sounds like my first guided trip.
Yeah, right. There was no guide school for me, so
Right.
it definitely was just kind of thrown into the hot seat. And then, you gotta anchor your boat, so you have to understand the way the current's going, which sounds easy enough, but when you're in a river like the Fraser, I mean, it's 60 feet deep. There's all of these eddies and stuff. So you've got to find a way to get your boat so it's anchored so that you're staying in one position because you're throwing your rods out the back.
Right.
But then you also have to be looking ahead all the time, in front of the bow to see if there's any logs coming down. Is there a tugboat coming down? There's always something you've got to be watching for. So
Wow.
that was just a little too much for me. I like getting out of the boat and walking my clients to the head of the run and then being able to nitpick that run all the way down.
Yeah. Well, that's you certainly can take it a little more slowly. Like,
Yeah.
did you have some moments when you're anchoring a boat in heavy current? I mean, I know I've done that both in Florida and in Wyoming, and there can be some incredibly scary moments when all of a sudden that boat just starts taking a different. Did you have some of those?
Yeah, I mean, one time, more than once, I'd have a log coming down. Well, now it's wedged on your anchor rope.
Yeah.
Well, the force of that and the pressure, it's going to pull your bow into the water, and then you've got a real problem. So, I had a couple of those situations. I had a situation where I was, obviously honked at by a tug. I guess I was right in the middle of some sort of three-way. I didn't know any of this. And it wasn't marked, to be fair. He was a bit of an asshole.
Yeah.
But, he definitely went out of his way to make it very clear that he was just going to miss me with his tugboat. This is probably my most least proud. Actually, do I even want to throw myself into the bus here? Well, whatever. I didn't know anything about jet boats, and I was I was 21 years old, and they're like, oh, yeah, you can run jet boats up to 2 inches of water. So me and all my wisdom, start the jet boat in 2 inches of water. Do you know how much gravel and stuff you suck up in you're going to take in 2 inches of water? Maybe
That's
5
not
inches.
good.
But no, so, I had some tough learning curves there, and I just decided this just isn't for me. I want to focus on the fishing. And don't get me wrong, I still use it. I own a jet boat. I run a jet boat. I use a jet boat. We guided out of a jet boat when I used to guide on the Dean. I love jet boats, but I don't want to fish out of one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're a good tool, I'm sure. But when you're doing this sturgeon guiding, you're also part of it is also salmon guiding. So did that outfit have the same kind of clientele for that? I mean, it's just some outfits just draw that type of clientele.
They drew that type of client.
Yeah.
So it'd be like, you get a lot of Euros, a lot of Europeans. And
so when you're doing this, are there other outfits on the same river that you're like
60 of them?
Like they're not doing what I'm doing. Like that looks way better. They're fly fishing.
No, they weren't. They were all doing what I was doing, and I wanted to shoot myself in the face. It was horrible.
Right.
I hated it.
So did you have an idea where you needed to go?
Yes, I always knew that was my idea. And actually, when he asked me to guide for him, I said, "Can I do your winter steelhead trips?" Which is what I was doing the moment I met him.
Mm-hmm.
And he said yes. So I counted down the summer so that I could then be able to do the winter steelhead trips in the same region, walking and wading, starting February, running through April.
That's a different clientele.
Totally. And then the wheels started turning. And that was it for me. I thought, you know what? This is what I want to do. I obviously am not a great sturgeon guide. Salmon guiding's another thing, but that mentality of people's not for me. I really want to focus on the experience.
Yeah.
And so I started my own guiding company.
Okay. And do you have to have permits for this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not.
But there are an infinite number available, or
in
you have
this
to purchase
region.
These permits, or
how
does it work?
In this particular region in the Lower Mainland, anybody can guide, but you have to have a guide license, you have to have special insurance, all of those.
Did you already
things.
have some of those things?
I had an assistant guide license. No, I had to basically start from scratch.
Okay.
And then obviously you need to own a company, all those things. But
then you're moving to a different river from where you were doing this before?
Yeah, but they're side by side. So I was actually guiding for winter steelhead on the Chilliwack, and it's tributary to the Fraser.
Okay.
Now where I live now, where people see me today and even over the last 15 years up north, those are rivers that require permits. I have guided on those rivers before, but for other companies. I've never owned my own guiding operation on a classified river system, which is totally different.
Okay. And so when you're first starting out, did you have trouble getting customers, or were?
No, yes and no. It was at the time of Facebook, when Facebook first started. So I obviously wasn't going to steal client. I mean, I've heard people do this. That's not my style. I wasn't going to take my employer's.
Yeah, you didn't want
clientele.
Those guys anyway.
No, even though his fly fishing clients were a different clientele, different sort of mentality. But that's just not, I don't know. It's just, it goes against my integrity. So I now suddenly am in a situation where I need to get my own clientele. And I'd been taking people from work. I was still cocktailing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was taking other gals with me, and word just starts to spread. And then when the internet came out, it was like, okay, I've got a platform here. And right, wrong, or otherwise, people were starting to figure out who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I made the decision at that time in my early 20 wisdom that if more people knew about me, then maybe I could get more people to know about my guiding operation. And that's what I did. I promoted myself, which landed me the customers.
From what I've seen so far with you, you seem to live by a strict moral code.
Yeah, I hope so.
What is that code? I mean, from just what you've told me, you didn't want to steal customers from your people. There's been lots of things I've come across with you, and that's one of the things that I think is most intriguing about you is that you live by this code.
Yeah.
How did you develop that
just
code?
Staying true to myself because I don't want to feel dirty by not being who I am. Now that's not great because being who I am has bit me in the ass many a times. I'm not the most likable person sometimes, I stand by my beliefs. And one of the things about being the sort of person who stands by what you believe in is you can be outspoken.
Yeah.
And when you have a big mouth, you can not be that likable. So, it hasn't always been easy.
So when have you been outspoken? I mean, when you first got on the internet, I know you got some, the Facebook thing, you got some, I don't know if it's hate. I don't know if it's you got unwanted attention, right?
Yeah. Well, it certainly wasn't wanted. It was expected, but not wanted.
It was expected. I would think that would not be expected because of the state of social media at the time. Like that was brand new, and you had no idea what to expect. I would think.
Yeah, but look at what I looked like. I was getting the same sort of attention on the river. I mean, people were like, why is she out here?
Oh.
There's no way she just likes fishing. She wants to find a man. She wants the attention. She's trying to make, I don't know what they thought I was trying to make, but everyone just thought I couldn't possibly be there.
So you just
angler.
go winter steelheading in frigid conditions so that maybe you might find a man out there,
which is so hilarious.
Like, have you ever been winter steelheading? If that's the case, this woman is desperate because that is awful.
So welcome to my life. So it's just the stupidity of it all, and that's one of the reasons why I would get myself in the hot seat because I'd be looking at these idiots, not thinking to myself, saying, "Are you stupid?" And so, then of course, now you're suddenly into a war of words with people online, which is pretty easy to do on the internet.
Yeah, you're never winning.
No. So, it's taken me 15 years ago. So it's taken me, I don't know, say it took me 10 years just to figure to keep my mouth shut. But yeah, I stand by.
But your moral code doesn't allow you to keep your mouth shut.
But it does if you start to realize that there's just a certain amount of people out there who just don't get it. That's cool. It's not my business. What they think about me is not my business. So, I stay true to my beliefs. I say no to people when they ask me to do things I don't believe in. I sleep well at night. I try my hardest. I want to die knowing that I honestly did the best I could. And I totally get and accept that not everyone's going to like me. I understand that. I even respect it. But I think the big thing for me, I read How to Be Compassionate by the Dalai Lama 5 times. And
you read it 5 times, really?
Yeah, when I was younger. And it was, for me, that was the big thing. I had to really beat it into myself, Maybe they don't like it. Maybe they do hate you, but maybe they just don't like you. Maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe you remind them of an ex-girlfriend, but it's really none of my business why they don't like me. And since I've just accepted that, my life is so much easier. There's no war of words on the internet. It gives me the time and headspace to focus on what really matters, which just lets me follow my moral code even more.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're guiding, and at some point you have a really tragic wreck.
Mm-hmm.
So I came across this on your Instagram when we were first starting to connect about this, and I'm looking at this picture, and that had to be a major time in your life.
That was
what did that wreck do for you? Because I mean, if you look at these pictures, it looks like you could have easily died.
Yeah, I can feel like right here, my stomach starts shaking as soon as I start talking about it.
Yeah.
Like that was the moment. That was it. That changed everything.
Okay, so that was the moment that changed everything. Changed it from what to what?
Well, that's a good question. So I had been waitressing at that time, and I would waitress all night, and I would work all day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really ambitious. I think I was really ambitious. After the accident, I was even more ambitious, but in a different way. So I had just landed a filming gig Is that mic okay?
Yeah.
Just landed a filming gig with some friends in Toronto or in Ontario. And I was on my way up to film my first episode. And it was going to be, what was it back then? Not Fly Nation. Was it Fly Nation? It was before Fly Nation. Anyway, it was an early fishing show that we were going to do. And on the way up there, we got in a bad car accident, got in a head-on collision with a drunk driver. And, I was going 110 or whatever. She was going 120. And we kilometers, and we matched headlight to headlight. And that was it.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, I had just gotten just looking at, you asked about the change. So forget all the physical change. Obviously, there was a ton of damage. Mentally, after you've seen something like that, it's hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. But when you go from seriously, like when you actually really think you're going to die and you don't, I guess everyone handles it differently. For me, I remember thinking I will never take for granted, my family or one more day of this. I'm not going to live one more second of anything that's not, something that I really want. Like if I'm going to die again, I want to know I have no regrets. Because when I was looking at that head coming at those headlights coming at me, I had regrets. So I made the decision I was no longer going to have any regrets. So from there, because I had just been going into this new filming gig, I'd basically gone down to part-time at the casino job where I was cocktailing. No benefits. I really had nothing. So I woke up and I had no job. So the option was either go on to unemployment insurance or really dive headfirst into Fly Gal, which I'd already started, but it was more part-time or guiding in the summer, kind of like we were talking about earlier. So and now I suddenly had to make this a full-time job. Well, you're laid up. What are you going to do? You're going to write articles. You're going to tie flies. You're going to maybe start some merchandise stuff and stamp your logo on it. I did actually end up going back up and filming that episode. I filmed the entire episode on crutches. So I decided to go into filming. And when I got better, I would start guiding again. So what the accident did was it forced me to really dive into fishing full time because I couldn't go back to waitressing. They wouldn't let me because
Did you even want to?
Well, yeah, it was excellent money. And I started at 8:30 at night, went till 4:30 in the morning. I never needed much sleep. I still don't. And I was making a killing. But because I'm now technically handicapped, I still am technically handicapped. They wouldn't let me back. I had to go and they wanted me to work surveillance, go upstairs and work surveillance. So there was no option. I had to go into fishing.
That's interesting. No option. That's the way it felt like for me, but it wasn't a disability on my ankle. It was a disability in my brain.
But it's one and the same, like there really was no other. I could have gone back to do anything. I could have gone back to be a lawyer, but all I ever wanted to do was work in fishing. But the waitressing allowed me to make money in the night.
Right.
But there was no other option for career paths. And I remember the lawyer saying, well, you can just get another job. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'll die if I don't have fishing. Like it is the only job for me. And he said, well, you're not going to make the same settlement if it's just fishing. And I said, well, so be it. And so I stood true to that all the way through to the end. Yeah.
That's cool. And so at that point, you decide to dive all the way in, and it sounded like you had a lot of ideas.
Yeah, I had a ton of ideas.
Didn't really know which one was going to be the best. Did you just dive into all of them at the same time?
Every one of them.
Okay.
Yep.
And at this time, what are you doing to support yourself? Like when you're recovering from this wreck and you're deciding this is my path and that bridge has burned. I didn't necessarily want it to burn, but it is burned and I can't go back to that, the waitressing and the cocktailing. So I am now on this path and you're recovering. You said your ankle was messed up.
Foot. Yeah, I've got a rebuilt foot. That's a bone. That's a bone. These are all plates.
Wow.
This is from wading in the
They did
coral.
a good job. It doesn't look like a club.
Just a scar. And then I can't point my 3 toes. You see, I'm trying to point them and they get to stick.
Yeah, but that's pretty good. I mean, that's good mobility out of a smashed up foot. Because man, there's so many bones in there.
Yeah, it's a Lis Frank fracture, so the joints are shattered. So I think they did a spectacular job.
Wow, that's incredible. But you're recovering from this, and you're deciding, okay, I got Fly Gal going. And I'm going to take it in these directions. And what are those directions that you're thinking about?
Okay, so I wrote out an Excel spreadsheet. And it was like, okay, how much money do I need to make? Because like you, I didn't want to be 75 years old and guiding, right? I needed to make my mortgage payments. I needed to pay for my expenses for business. And I needed to have money to put aside to invest. I've always invested money. So it was like, well, and at the time, I didn't really need that much money. And when you really break down.
You don't. And that is an incredibly good exercise for a lot of people to
Excuse
do
me.
is like, what is it that I want to do, and blue sky it,
Mhm.
especially at 23 years old. What do you want to do? You want to travel? You want to go 3 trips a year? Okay, put it down on paper, and you come back and I want to live in this house and I want drive this car, and you put it all down. It's really not that much
And
money.
that's exactly what I did. So I wrote it down and then I tacked on another 10 grand. And I thought, all right, so that's what I need. It's not that bad. I need to sell 10 t-shirts a month. I need to sell, flies are great because I can tie flies. I only need 5 hours sleep. I can tie flies all day long.
And the kind of flies you're tying are more
Totally different.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was
Like
able to sell them, 15. At some point, I was,
$50 a fly?
no, 1.5.
Oh,
But then eventually it was
15.
like $18 a fly, 20. I just kept,
Right.
racking up the price. And then it got to the point where I was just on a waiting list and I was like, okay, I can't keep up with this. But at that point, my career had taken other paths. But yeah, so I'm going to tie flies. All right. So I need to tie 50 flies a month. I need to do how many trips a month? All right. How many casting lessons a month? How many of these things do I need to do a month? And then, obviously in the spreadsheet, it automatically totals your sum. And I realized, all right, I can do this. This is something I can do. I'm going to try this for a year. And it worked.
That's interesting. That's very similar to Derek DeYoung. I had him on here, and he had a moment with his father-in-law that is kind of like, okay, you're taking my daughter, and let me see how you're gonna, like, business savvy guy. Like, let's put this on paper and see how it works. And Derek said he put it on paper, and it was definitely not going to work. And that was a real eye opener for him to say, okay, well, if that's not going to work, then we need to try it this way, as opposed to, in his words, where, look, if we haven't done that exercise, we would have gone down that road for 5 years and barely made it until we just can't make it anymore.
Yes.
And then everything goes kaput. But very interesting like that. So you're doing all of those things like on a monthly basis, even despite the weather. Like,
No,
you're not taking
no.
casting lessons in the winter.
No,
right?
and I wasn't doing that many casting lessons back then because I really wasn't very talented.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I wanted to get my FFF. I was waiting for my certification before.
That's hard.
Yeah, well, it's done now. You
Yeah.
just have to study, right? But so then, I'd factor in, all right, so February, March, April, I need to book maybe 7 days a week of guiding, right? Because you need to factor it in. Because
And that's your main money, the guiding, right?
At the time, that was
Yeah.
my main money, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then you have writing.
Yeah, and writing doesn't pull in that much income. You you do some writing, you probably know it.
I write for free.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it all
It
goes on our
depends, but-
blog and stuff like that. I have sold magazine articles in the past, and it was a lot of work to make a very little bit of money.
That's exactly right.
And that was even when the magazines were a thing. Like, they were big, and people actually read them, and they had 150,000 subscribers, and those were all paying money, and they had money to pay out. I can't imagine what it would be like today. People don't do that. I know I used to subscribe to 8 magazines. I subscribed to 0 magazines.
Yeah.
My wife used to subscribe to, we used to have magazines all over. There are no magazines anymore.
Well, what I would do is I would take an article. So say for a Canadian article, I'd make $500. Sometimes for an American article, I'd make up to $1,200. So you're looking kind of at, between $500 and $1,200. I would take that article, but then I would turn around and I'd sell it to a Danish magazine. To an Icelandic magazine, to a German magazine. And then I'd be able to quadruple my money off of it.
Wow. That's smart.
Yeah. Thanks.
So would you write these articles like on the river that you're fishing?
Sometimes. Most of my writing is done best while I'm, in reflection and on the river. Yeah.
But you're talking about, like, these are stories, or they're
stories. Yeah. I can't do how-tos.
Yeah.
No.
Because I was thinking that maybe your moral code might not allow for writing about a river that you feel very strongly about and then bring a lot of people there.
Well, that's a good point, and it depends on the river. I've been asked to write about rivers that I refuse to write about. But there are certain rivers that aren't secrets, and maybe I'm writing a conservation story. Like, it just depends on, it depends. Or you can write about a river or an experience and describe the river and not ever mention the river.
Yeah. My experience with that, the first article that I think I ever published was on the Marquesas, and I think it happened at an ICAST show, and one of the publishers comes up and says, hey, I'd like to get you to write an article for us. And I said, okay. And so we start talking, and we talk after the show, and he says, we want to do this on the Marquesas Keys, which is a place that I used to fish a lot. And so I start having this, uneasy feeling about it. Like, man, I don't really know if I want to write this article about the Marquesas. And so I reluctantly pick up the phone and start calling this guy. I'm like, hey, listen, I don't know that I'm going to be able to write this article.
Mhm.
Oh, really? Why? I just don't really want to. exploit this place.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll never forget this, and it all changed. It changed everything. He goes, all right. Well, I understand that. He said, but, I asked you to write that article for a particular reason because I wanted you to write that article. And I said, okay, well, I appreciate that. He said, so it's on the calendar that there's going to be an article on the Marquesas Keys in that issue. Now, you can write it the way that you want to write it, or somebody else is going to write it. But there's going to be an article on the Marquesas. And so I then thought, oh, okay, well, who's to say that the other guy's not going to super exploit it? So I have this opportunity to write this article in the way that I'm going to feel okay about. And that changed everything. Like, okay.
And that didn't make you resent him a little bit? Like, I think every part of me would have been like, don't call me again.
Well, no, he was being friendly about it. He wasn't saying like, look, he's like, look, I want you to write this article because I think you're going to put out something good. It's going to be authentic. You're going to, the reasons that you don't want to write this article are the reasons we want you to write this article, because you're going to take care. The information is going to be authentic. You're not going to do it in a certain way that's going to exploit the resource. You're going to paint the picture of what this is. People have to go out there and find it for themselves. There's not going to be GPS coordinates. There's not going to be all of these things. And so he was just saying, look, this was on the docket already before I came to you. You have the choice of writing it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then the control is now with me. And it's like, okay, I can write this article in a way that I'm being true to myself and to the resource. And it turned out fine. Right? Like,
do you feel good about it now?
Yeah.
How long ago was this article written?
Oh, a long time ago. Like probably 18 years ago or so.
Okay. And you still feel good about it though?
Yeah.
But have you ever done something where I'm totally going to take it back for a second. When we filmed it was okay, so the first one I was talking about is actually Flymax Films, when I was talking about filming when I was on crutches.
Mm-hmm.
When we filmed Fly Nation, back in my early 20s wisdom, I thought it was going to be a great idea. Same thing, we're going to film northern BC. We're going to film on these rivers. My big thing was we need it to be nameless. We can't mention the names of the rivers. Right. So we go up and we do all this filming. We have an epic trip. We catch all of these fish. We assume it's never going to end up on YouTube, by the way. It was only ever supposed to be on the World Fishing Network. And I would have stood, if someone asked me at that time if I was making a mistake filming on those rivers, even though they were nameless, I would have stood my ground in my strong morals, as you say, and I would have said, nope, this is great. It's going to tell people that, these rivers are amazing. We need to support them, et cetera, et cetera. I look back now, a decade later, and I go, what was I thinking? Why would we do that? And now it's on YouTube, and I feel like I've totally had a hand in exploiting the rivers. Like, I regret it every day.
Yeah.
That's really scary to me.
But in that situation, a lot of that stuff was out of your control. You're not the editor, right?
No, I should have said no. I mean, I would never have put it up on YouTube. And I asked them to take it off YouTube.
But at the time, you are making that judgment. You are making that decision based upon the information that you have in front of you. You don't have 20 years of experience that you have now that you can look back and say, that was a really bad idea. You're looking at it as, this is the experience that I have to draw from, and I'm going to make this decision now. And if you felt good about it at that point, then it was the right decision, I think, at that point.
At that point.
But
in your early 20s.
Right.
But the regret that I have from that really has taught me, if there's any inch of you that wavers, just say no. Just say no.
Right. Yeah. Well, you were saying before, though, that you would have stood your ground and said that there was no part of you that was wavering at that point.
Which is even scarier to me.
Yeah, but you can't kick yourself for something that when it was right at the time, you felt like it was right, and all the information that you have in front of you is telling you that it was right. If you go ahead and do it, and something changes, or you look back after many things have happened, like you've seen other rivers be exploited, you've seen all kinds of different things that happen, and you're looking back and going, man, I wish I hadn't have done that. But at the time, that's all you had to draw from.
Yeah.
I don't think you can feel so badly about that.
But you can learn about it moving forward.
You can learn about it moving forward, but what would you learn from it?
I would learn that something that may not have such a big impact right now, 10 years down the road, especially given the reach that we have with the internet, can come back to bite a fishery in the ass and to leave it alone.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say no to filming on anything that I feel could be exploited for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And so your experience with television is what? Yeah, how many different
Yeah, well
forays have you had into television?
my series is totally different. Like I have no regrets about my series because the series we did film on a lot of these rivers, but we didn't catch like the series isn't focused on catching fish. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it was focused on the stories of the people behind the fisheries years past. So yeah, I sleep very well about the television series, but that was probably the peak of my television career. What I'm talking about now is like a 10-minute or it was a 22-minute or 23-minute episode on Fly Nation television years ago. And then, yeah, I've done the occasional television appearance, but my series was kind of the peak of the television thing. And then that was it when the network stopped producing any more original content.
Yeah, that's that road which we talked about on your podcast is the difference between owning everything and owning nothing, and there are definitely two very different models, and then everything in between of hybrids of those models. We've always gone down the own everything and control, what you can, as opposed to, the amount of money that comes in the beginning from a funded production, but as soon as the ratings go bad, they pull it, they pull it, and you just never have any control over it. And we have done that, and it's not on the air anymore. And so we've always gone down this road. But you have your series and then just a bunch of other shows.
You just being a guest on
Yeah.
the show or like 60 Minutes.
Do you like that?
Which part?
Just the being the guest on shows?
I haven't been a guest on someone's fishing show in a really, really long time.
Well, what was your role in Bones and Buccaneers?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Were you like a host, or
were
you kind of a guest?
I was just a guest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you like that one?
Yeah, I'll do television again. Don't get me wrong. It's got to be I've got to have the reins on it.
Yeah.
I had the reins on my show and I loved it. And I would do that again for
How
sure.
long did that go?
Just a season. And then they canceled all of their original programming. Yeah.
And that was on World Fishing Network?
Yeah. Yeah. And I really, really enjoyed that. That was one of my favorite things I've ever done. But I want any television I want to do, I want it to be more than just fish numbers. It has to be. Because I don't just fish for numbers. So why would a television series that's reflective of me be just about numbers? Whereas that Fly Nation piece, it's fish porn. It's like just, fish jumps here, fish jumps. It's just not, that's not who I am. And so that's not what anything I do in future is going to be.
And how does conservation play into your moral code and into what you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, well, it's everything to me. It depends. That's a really big question.
Yeah, I know.
Which country? Which?
Well, let's. You are in two different countries, Australia and BC, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with BC. That seems to be an easier one because I don't know a lot about BC, but it seems kind of fragile.
It's super fragile, and the scary thing is it's getting more fragile every year. I'm still learning this myself. I'm still learning just how fragile it is. Which again, it's scary to me that. Here's a prime example. I was a guest on 60 Minutes. It's a pretty big show, right?
Really big.
Yeah. So they said, we want to come in and we want to film you on the Dean. And I said, well, that's not going to happen because I was guiding on the Dean, but we don't need any more pressure on the Dean, which in retrospect is kind of hilarious because it's one of the best managed fisheries in British Columbia. But I said, no, it's not happening. They said, well, you realize we're 60 Minutes. I said, yeah, I realize that. So my brother-in-law and I sat down and thought, well, what river does need the help? Well, the Bulkley and that region in the Skeena region needed the help with some LNG stuff that was happening, different proposals. So I said, well, we'll do the Bulkley. And everyone's heard of the Bulkley. Who hasn't heard of the Bulkley, right? That's what I'm thinking. And I still don't think that I don't know what sort of impact it would have had as far as bringing pressure in, but we talked about conservation on that episode and none of it was aired. And I love those guys. I love 60 Minutes. I would do it over. I think I would do it over again. But I had convinced the lodge owner to take us out in the boat because we were going to talk about this conservation that was never aired. So yeah, I don't.
What was the point of them coming in the beginning? Like they wanted to film you on the Dean for what reason?
They just wanted to talk about my life. Yeah.
Just a personal.
Yeah, but conservation's a big part of my personal story. Right. So to cut it out really hurt. And so, I'm pretty careful these days about what I allow my name to go on. So conservation wise, you ask like where it matters to me. I turn down a lot of opportunities I think that are going to bring unnecessary attention.
In the conservation
No, like media.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, media stuff. If
Mhm.
there's an opportunity just to talk about me, if I can't have a spin to it that's going to do better,
Right.
I'll usually pass up on that. Because now with my podcast, I have a platform. Like if I have something to say, I've got somewhere to say it. I don't have to go anywhere else to say what I have to say. So yeah, I really watch what I do as far as leading by example. I think that I do my best not to be hoisting fish out of the water. I obviously am really cautious about my fish handling. I personally don't need to catch that many fish. I try to limit my fish to maybe 1 or 2 a day, maybe if I even go fishing that day. Try to
And
promote.
that's in BC.
This is in BC, yeah.
Mhm.
I haven't really been at the forefront of any major leading causes these days because most of the stuff I've been passionate about has been beat off, been beat. So yeah, I know you're thinking dirty. No, it hasn't been beat off by me, but it has been beaten by bigger groups like Skino, the Skino.
What are the pressing issues in BC?
These days,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. I got to get back up north. No, I'm totally serious. It was for so long, there was this big fight with all of there was Enbridge and LNG and all of these. And then before that, it was Shell. And I've always just been able to kind of dabble in it.
Mhm.
And then the problem is then I have to leave countries again. So
Yeah.
I can never really be fully immersed, which plays on my conscience, quite often. But I just got back, a week ago. So I'm just on my way heading back up north. I'll be sitting down with the organizations there and figuring out what the next big focus is and seeing what we really need to dig our heels in with. The Thompson's going through some major issues, but again, I can't even speak on that right now because I'm so out of the loop. I've just
Right.
I had a baby in December and everything's kind of just been on hold.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that too. But conservation has been a major theme
Yeah.
in your life. Do you think, was there a moment that you decided that that you are a steward of these areas and that you have to get involved in these issues, or were you always kind of involved in protecting the resource?
Yeah, I don't want to give me that much credit because you have to understand, like, I go in and I speak at an event, right? So I'll go in as an MC and I'll speak at an event. I'll use my social media platform to raise money. That's something that I can be proud of. But I'm not the conservationist or the steward or the person who deserves any accolades. Like not at all. The people I put on my show are those people
Yeah.
who are the conservationists. I agree with the guests I have on the show. I support them. I use my exposure to help them, but I'm not a hero in not even like a little bit. I'm just the news.
Right.
I'm just the news.
Yeah, but you're choosing that is important news to
Right. And I mean, there's little things I do. Like I'll do, obviously, like for when we got married, we didn't want money. We wanted people to make donations. So like we do little things here and there. Being a 1% for the Planet organization, I donate, obviously a percent of my earnings. But I always feel a little bit hypocritical when people say, oh, you're a conservationist. And it's like, well, I'm not really. I am a conservationist in that I try my hardest and I make daily decisions based on what I deem to be responsible. But if I was really a conservationist, I'd be Shannon McVale and I'd be, these girls and these gals who are with an organization and fighting for it every day. I'm fluttering around the world and oftentimes not even knowing what's going on. So I just want to make that very clear because that's always been a soft spot for me when people say, oh, you're a conservationist. Well, define conservationist because I'm pretty, I don't know. I wouldn't give myself that much credit.
I think a conservationist is somebody who cares about a resource and does what they can to help. And in some ways, like for instance, I care deeply about the Everglades and what's going on in the Everglades. I am definitely not on the leading edge of that fight. Daniel Andrews, Chris Whitman, Captains for Clean Water, those guys are on they've got the guns in their hands. They got the spears in their hand. They are the leading edge of that fight. They are in a position in their life. They're in a place where they have organized their life around this, and this is what they're doing. Right? We need people like that. Right? Definitely. Those people. Without those people, nothing happens. But you are not in that position. You are in a different position to where you can bring attention to what those people are doing. If you choose to do that because you care deeply about that resource, then you're providing a valuable part of that fight too,
Yeah,
right?
no, that's fair. And that's what I see my role as.
Right.
I'm not in all the government meetings. I wish I was in one spot long enough to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, you're not though, and you're in Australia, which is probably my maybe third favorite country in the world, and I've only
Really?
been there one time. And I just thought, you go to a place and you're there for about, I don't know, a half a day. You're like, I could live here. Like I could totally live here.
What
In
part
fact,
of
I might
Australia?
not go home. I did an awesome trip, just the best trip ever. And I don't even know if it's still offered, but if it is, you should go. We flew into Cairns, and then
Oh, you've
I
already
went
got my heart.
up all the way up to the Carpentaria, which is very similar. If you look at the map, it's like an upside down the United States, and the Carpentaria Peninsula is like Florida, and it kind of has a gulf on one side and kind of has an ocean on the other side, and it has all these rivers that flow out. And Howard McKinney from Fish About told me about this trip. He was like, "Man, you will not believe this trip. It is the best ever. It is you go up, and then you get on this boat and you go up, and then you hit these river mouths all the way down." And it was with this guy named Greg Bethune, and he was a remarkable captain that knew so much about, and he just had this amazing
I think I've heard of him.
giant, what would you call it, a catamaran aluminum boat.
Aluminium,
Yeah,
yes.
aluminum, and he had made the outside look like tarpon scales with a circular grinder, like.
Oh, cool.
And so the whole thing looked like, I don't know if he intended it for it to look like tarpon scales, but when I showed up, I'm like, man, that looks like tarpon scales. This is gonna be great. And so then he had like 6 skiffs on it, and you went on there. You were totally self-contained. You went all the way up there. You hit these river mouths all the way down, and I went there with the intention of catching the Indo-Pacific permit because I had already caught the Atlantic permit, and maybe Howard McKinney and maybe a couple of other people had done this at the same around that time, of caught both. And but there were probably lots of people that had caught both on fly, but I didn't know them. So I wanted to be the first person that I knew to catch both. And when I got there, I found the permit was the least interesting of all the fish.
Yeah.
We caught 57 species of fish on that trip,
Yeah.
and the permit was really cool, and I really liked it, and caught a couple, and then just moved on. I mean, it's like we could continue to do this, but there's so much more.
What was your favorite?
I really like the queenfish.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, the queenfish,
love the
queenfish started this whole different chapter of my life because it was the first day. So we stop at this river mouth. They say, and it was very loose. There were guides, and then they just gave me a boat and were like, go. So I just took Fitz Coker's son, me and him fished together, no guide, and Fitz Coker and Dottie Ballantyne, they fished in one boat, and Fitz had his whole family there, and it was like a hosted trip, but it was the hosted trip with the people that I like the most of all my clients, right? So
Yeah.
it was perfect. It was just awesome. And we go out, and there's like this riffle, and just like a riffle in a trout stream, and queenfish just stacked in there. And so we start catching them on fly. Then I brought spinning rods. I catch them on spinning rods. I catch them on poppers. I catch them on jigs. I catch them on every way that I can possibly catch them, right? And I don't know anything about a queenfish, but I'm picking these queenfish up, and
They're
I'm like,
big.
wow. I don't know how big these things get, but that looks like a really big one. Like maybe they get 100 times the size. I don't know, but that looks like a really mature, heavy-bodied, old fish, and release it, catch another one, just going on. So then we go back to the boat for lunch, and I'm sitting there talking, and everybody's just on top of the world. We had just had the greatest morning ever. And I'm talking to Fitz, and I'm like, those fish looked big to me. I don't know how big a queenfish gets. Let's look. There's a world record book right here. So we open it up, and we had some boga grips, and we were boga gripping them and everything. And it turns out almost every one we were catching would have been a world record.
No way.
Yeah. And we had, I had an IGFA certified boga grip. And so we were just having the best time. But I mean, how many more queenfish can you catch? Like we've caught them on every tackle that we've brought. We caught them on every fly that we have. We've caught them on every piece of thing. The next thing would be to hand line them or something. I don't know. There were just so many there. We were starting to get bored. And so I just proposed to Dottie and Fitz. I said, look, Dottie, there is a women's record on 12-pound, all you got to do is catch a 6-pound queenfish. The ones you were catching are 18 pounds. Like, would you want to give this a try? I'll tie it up, and I've got the thing right here. And she said, I don't want to kill it. And I said,
right.
that's fine. We don't have to kill it. I said, we can weigh it on this. All we got to do is get to dry ground, which is right over there. And so we went out there, and she broke off a whole bunch of them, and we kept going. And she caught one, weighed it, took a picture of it. Turns out to be her first world record. And Dottie went on to be the first woman ever in history to get more than 100 world records on fly.
Whoa, that was how it started.
Yeah, that's how it started. And it was right there in Australia. And I just thought Australia was just the coolest place ever. It reminded me of like old Florida. Like if
Yeah.
you went to Florida back in the 1800s and you just happened to have a yellowfin with a 300 horsepower motor and an infinite supply of gasoline.
Yeah.
And you could go do anything, and the fishing would be like that. But we caught all these different kinds of fish I didn't even know existed. And what I liked about it the most was that there were each fish that I feel strongly about, tarpon, snook, permit, bonefish, they all had a complementary fish over there. Like the snook, I found, was very similar to the barramundi. The tarpon, there were oxeye herring down there, but they were better than tarpon because they only got this big, but you could catch. They were like Jack Crevalle, so you just keep catching them over and over, and they did everything that a tarpon would do. But I just thought that country, that trip, the Great Barrier Reef.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just have to tell you this story. So I'm going down there with the sole intention of catching a permit on fly. I had no idea that all this other stuff was there for me. And somehow I was supposed to go to Lizard Island with Fitz and his family, but I left Key West and went and landed in Memphis somehow. And I was on the tarmac in Memphis, and there was a horrible lightning storm. And it delayed my plane from Memphis to LA so badly that, or just enough, that Fitz and his party left to go to Australia. Okay. So I get there, they're already gone.
Oh.
Which puts me a day behind. The next flight was 24 hours later to go there. So I have to stay in LA, and I'm trying to call them. No cell phones at this time. This is a long time ago. And I miss them. And they're like going on to Lizard Island. They couldn't find me, so I was just going to have to catch up to them later. So I caught the next flight, went over there, and I'm in Cairns all by myself for 4 days, right? Because they went to Lizard Island, and I have to catch up to them. I know where they're going to be, but there's no way to contact them, and so I have to meet them in 4 days. So from there, I was like, well, Great Barrier Reef's right there. So I'm going to the Great Barrier Reef. Like I just booked a little tourist snorkeling trip out to the Great Barrier Reef. We're going out there, and I've got a Del Brown permit hat on, and it's got a picture of the permit on it. So talking to the dive master, and I'm like, yeah, I came here to go on this fishing trip. He's like, oh, that's cool. That's a really cool area. And I said, I'm looking for this fish right here. Have you ever seen one of these? And he says, no, that's interesting. Never seen one of those.
What?
And I said, and you snorkel, scuba dive around here all the time. You never seen these? And I'm like, well, it must be further up north, you know? And so we get there, anchor the boat. They dump us all out. And it was a very, professional, like not super tourist, but like high-end kind of snorkel thing. And so the guy's got a camera, and he goes in, and I'm right next to him. And I go down, and I'm snorkeling around, and I'm just looking at the Great Barrier Reef and just in awe. And I look up, and there's a giant school of permit right there. And so I swam back up, and I was like, hey, man, look, this fish that I was telling you about, they're all right there. And he said, no way. I said, yeah, they're all right there. And so he goes, let's go find them. And he takes his camera down, and we go down, and he swims with me, and I swim, and these fish basically envelop me. And I'm like, in the video, I'm like, look, what the hell? You said they're never here. And he's like, I've never seen these before.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so that was my experience on the Great Barrier Reef, and it was just amazing. And then we went up there, and I actually caught the permit on one of the first couple of days. But then I was like, but there's so much more.
Mm.
Like Australia, what's your fishing like in Australia?
Excuse me. It depends on which side of the coast I'm on.
Where do you live?
I'm embarrassed to tell you, Manly. So, it's the first northern beach out of Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I love fishing in Australia more than probably any other saltwater trip I've ever done, but you have to go to the other side.
Oh.
So, Exmouth is my favorite. Exmouth? I hope I'm not exploiting that.
Yeah. Well, I don't
It's a
know
big
much.
trip to go over there. But
Yeah,
yeah,
is it?
Exmouth, and then I haven't fished up in Cairns up where you were, but my
Well, I
husband
was way up there. Look at the map.
way,
I mean,
way.
like as far up as you can get.
That's where my husband used to tromp around.
Yeah,
And
really.
it's just out of this world. But yeah, Exmouth is as far up as I've gone. I fished Hinchinbrook on the East Coast as well. But if you look at a map and find Exmouth, it's kind of just got like this little, like a gulf in there. And it's just full of, milkfish, giant trevally,
Really?
permit, tons and tons of big queenies, barramundi, a saltwater barramundi.
Wow.
Like, it's absolutely unbelievable.
Have you figured out the milkfish?
Not in Australia. I've tried everything I do for them when I'm in the Seychelles, and I just can't seem to get one to bite. But obviously, I'm using quotations there because they don't, like, they're eating algae, right?
I don't know. One bit my fly in Christmas Island.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Bonefish
Christmas
fly.
Island. Yeah,
And
on purpose.
it seemed like it was on purpose. It was right in the mouth, and it came flying out of the water. And I had cast to those things the first time I went to Christmas Island. I cast to them for hours and couldn't get anything. And this time I was stripping the fly in, and boom, he eats it and takes off.
Have you seen them eat?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, yeah. Well, when
Yeah,
they're just
their
doing
mouths
their
are
thing,
wide open
yeah,
and
like
they
they're
literally-
kind of like carp, right?
Yeah.
But somebody in the Seychelles, and we were just talking about this with Robert Trossett, because he just went and had this amazing experience catching hogfish on fly.
Oh, cool.
In the Bahamas, and not many people do that. And he
No.
caught this big 10-pounder, and I was relating that to. The first time I went to Christmas Island, nobody fished for the milkfish and nobody fished for the triggerfish.
Right.
And the second time I
not
go
even
back,
the triggers?
no, they weren't fishing for them. They don't bite. And you fish for bonefish or trevally. That's all you fish for.
Mhm.
And then the second time I go back there, many years had passed, and now triggerfish is like a thing. There's flies
time.
for them. There's guides that only guide for triggerfish. There are anglers that only fish for triggerfish. I was like, what the hell happened? This is like completely different than last time, but okay, fine. I'll fish for them too. That sounds fun. And turns out they're not that hard to catch, and they're really cool. And I had a great experience with the triggerfish, but I kind of related the hogfish thing to, in a few years, like you think that that's the only place that they are, but in a few years, people will be catching them in all these other places because one person showed that it was possible.
Yeah.
And I always think about one of my clients that he used to fish on the Dean too. His name was Ken Dunstan. Do you know him?
No, he was one of mine.
So anyway, he was there, and he was like telling me that these guides got some kind of green shoelace, and they were working out some kind of green shoelace, and they were putting it through there, and they were actually hooking the milkfish. And those things, man,
I've never had my arm shake
that's a fish.
as much as with a milkfish.
That one has a motor.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, it looked like a ladyfish with a tarpon tail. Like
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
biggest, craziest fish, but they fly out of the water. They're super fast. I don't even know if you can land them. I mean, some people are landing them, but I don't know.
You can land. I was trying this year or last year when I was in the Seychelles. I was trying to get them on the flats.
Yeah.
You could hook them, but
That's where this one was on the bonefish fly. It was in knee deep water.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it wasn't with a whole bunch of them. It was just a single milkfish.
Oh, that is so cool.
Well, I don't know if that's a thing. Like maybe I just kind of caught him in the side of the mouth accidentally, or I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
And I could see him, and I cast to him, and strip, and I don't think he's going to do it. And then the next thing I know, it's over my head.
Ugh.
And takes, lands in the water and takes off, 50, 60 feet of line, and then it just separates,
Yeah.
But really cool. So the Australia, what do you think about the Australian country? When you got there, did you feel the same as I did? Like, this is amazing and I love this place?
Like, how is this not all over the internet right now? Let's keep it that way.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
I definitely felt like I just stumbled into a fisherman's paradise.
But not even fishing though. Do you enjoy the Australian culture? Do you enjoy the Australians?
Yes.
Do you like where you live?
Yes, yes.
Do you like BC better?
Of course, I love Canada. I love Canada. Look, I'm an adventurer, right? I love exploring.
Yeah.
I really get off on exploring, and I really get off on feeling small in a big world. And Canada does that for me. I look at a map, and even with on the flight here last night with my daughter on my lap. I had the map, that's on the screen in front of you, and I had it enlarged. And I'm going, ooh, look at the Cascade Range there, and ooh, we could get lost in there. I love
And
feeling small.
you don't feel small in Australia?
I do, but
My
have you
God, that
looked
is a
at the
giant
landscape?
country.
It's like one big. There's like nothing in the middle, which is great. As
Yeah.
an explorer, I'm like, yeah, let's go exploring the middle. When I moved there, I was so excited to go exploring, but then it's pretty like the middle of the continent's pretty.
Nobody lives there because
There's
of a reason.
really nothing going on there.
Yeah.
I would love to do some exploring. Don't get me wrong, but I think I would just feel thirsty and lost rather than
That's how I
overwhelmed.
felt when I took my son to the desert Southwest. Thirsty and lost.
Yeah. I want to feel like I'm being engulfed by, I just want to feel like I could disappear into a mountain range somewhere and have to survive on my own.
Yeah.
And if I was dropped into the middle of British Columbia, I could do it. If I was dropped into the middle of Australia, I would just die.
It'd be like that movie with the Coke bottle comes out. Gods Must Be Crazy. Have you
What?
seen that? You
No.
don't know that?
No.
Oh, you got to see the Gods Must Be Crazy. There's like a plane flying over the middle of Australia, and he drinks a Coke and throws it out the window, and it lands in this undeveloped or untouched civilization, finds this Coke bottle and thinks it's from the gods.
Oh.
And then the whole movie is about this. They want to try to return this Coke bottle. And it's hilarious.
That
it's
sounds
one of the greatest
amazing. I'm
movies
gonna have to
ever.
watch that.
No, you got to see that. It's so funny.
I'll have to watch it.
It's great.
But no, I love the Australians. I love all of that. I do love all of that. But I miss feeling like I could be lost in the woods.
Mm.
Yeah, I like New Zealand for that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's not very far away.
No.
Right?
So we spent a lot of time there, yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like how is that a
3 hours?
3-hour plane ride? Yeah. And are the tickets reasonable?
Totally reasonable.
Are they
You
really?
get there for like $300.
Wow.
Yeah, and the thing is that everything's a little bit behind in New Zealand, especially, as soon as you get into the countryside. And you want to fish a property, you just go to the person's house and, you knock on the door, you go in, you have coffee together. I
Huh.
love hearing their stories. I love hunting and I love farming, and it's so cool to talk to them. They show me their gardens. And yeah, I really love New
Do
Zealand.
you think that's a place you could live?
I think that is a place
mean-
I will be living very soon.
Really? Like your husband's work allows for that,
My
or
husband's work might be taking a back seat to us spending half of our year in New Zealand.
nice.
So give us some time.
So half a year, and then the other half in New Zealand.
So half
I
BC.
mean, BC, right?
Yeah. So that's
That's
it's
super
a
cool.
1 to 5 year plan, but the motion is set in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, you've spoke it, and now you will
You can
make
watch it.
make it happen.
Yeah, there's more to
That's
that,
cool.
but I'm gonna just for now, for what I'm willing to talk
Okay,
about.
that's
about
cool. Well, tell me about this. So we talked about a major life change when you had this wreck,
Mm-hmm.
and that sent you down this path of fly gal and maturing that. And now you have you've had 2 other life changes. You got married, and then you have a baby.
Yeah.
And what is that life change like for you?
I just never laughed so much. I just laugh all day long. I'm constantly laughing. She's hilarious. She's just the funniest thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, she's only 7 months. So like everyone's like, oh, life's so different now, isn't it? And I'm going, well, no. I laugh more. I'm happier. I'm more fulfilled. But no, but give me some time. Like let her get a little bit older and then ask me. But
Yeah.
I think last night was my first experience of, oh, this could get hard. Our flight was, she loves to entertain people and she hates sleep. She hates sleep just like her mom. And so she fights it. And so she fights it by staying stimulated. And so what she does is she entertains everybody on the airplane. And of course she's cute. So they all are like, oh my God, she loves me. Look at her smiling. And I'm going, just ignore her. Just leave her.
Yeah.
She won't sleep. So yesterday was my first time, which is why I'm kind of all
And
over the
this
place.
is a flight from Australia to the United States?
No, we went through Canada,
Okay.
but we got in at 2 a.m. Well, we landed at 1 and then Delta lost her car seat. So if I look tired just for people, or if I sound tired for people listening, it's because I bloody well am. It was
Wow.
a very late night.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was like my first experience, just that she was really squirmy. That was my first experience having a moment of, oh, this could be different. But so up till then, everything's been pretty smooth.
And your daily routine before you have a baby is something that is similar now that you have a child?
Yeah, well, yes and no. She loves being outside. So
Mm.
as long as she's strapped onto me, she's happy. She loves
So you
the
fish with
green.
her?
I fish and hunt with her. Yeah, she
Nice.
absolutely loves it. So, and
Is she when I had my kids, I remember there was a moment or a time when they were in front, and then they graduated to being in back. I would think at
she's
7 months she's still in front,
she's
right?
still in front, but turned around, so she's out looking.
Oh yeah, that makes a huge difference because now she's like, wow.
She loves it. So we call in deer together. She's so cute. She loves calling in deer, and obviously we play with the wombats, and we run into fox.
What's a
in
wombat?
in Australia, it's the cutest little rodent you've ever. It's like the size of a small pig,
Okay.
and they're so cute. And they
They
look
don't
like
hurt
like a
any.
little bear. No, no, they're really really sweet little animals.
What do they eat?
Probably grass. I don't know. They live in the
They
dirt.
don't get in your
They're
garden?
like a big mole.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but really really cute.
Okay. And so you're getting those in. Do you have any other wildlife around your place?
In Australia or in
Yeah.
BC?
Australia.
Wombats, kangaroos, wallabies. She finds those hilarious. Fox, deer. Obviously, we have fallows and stag. And then in BC, we've got a lot more animals. So I'm going to be a little more cautious. I won't be hunting with her in BC like I did in Australia. This year in Australia, she was out the entire hunting, the whole rut. She was out with me.
Wow.
But we had an experience with a cow. We got charged by a cow.
Like a real cow? Like
Yeah,
a
that
beef
sounds
cow?
really silly, but no, like a heifer, yeah, a female cow who was the dominant one in the group, and they had calves. And I thought I was seeing things at first because she wouldn't let us walk by her. I was hunting, or I was scouting a property I'd scouted before that Adelaide likes, and so I thought I'd take her just for a scout, and it chased us. And I thought, surely I'm just being an overprotective mom, but she chased us over a barbed wire fence, and so we got put out of the property, and we had to find a new way in. And you ever tried shuffling a baby through a barbed wire fence?
No,
Not fun.
I've done a lot of things with a baby, but not barbed wire.
Nope, that was interesting. So we
Yeah.
made it through, and then we did our scout, and then a few hours later went to come back, and she's there again. And my gut just told me something it didn't feel right. And I text the owner and said, "Hey, look, I don't feel good about this." And he didn't get back to me, so I just passed the time waiting to hear back. Didn't hear back. Now it's getting dark, and we decided we're going to go through. And anyway, I was right. She was growling. She was pawing the ground at us,
Wow.
and she came at us. And I didn't have a bow. I've got a baby strapped to me. I felt totally helpless. And so I didn't run, but I couldn't get to the gate in time. But there were these two big trees, like a V of trees. So I got behind that, and she was literally trying to come around the tree. It was like something out of an animation.
Wow.
Yeah, if you YouTube like cow attacks, because I thought I was just I don't know what happened. Like, was she rabid? And I put it up on social media, and I just got bombarded with emails from farmers saying it's a real serious thing.
Yeah, they'll
More
get after you.
Well, more people are killed in the UK every year by cows than any other animals.
And not mad cow.
Yeah, and
disease.
not bulls either,
Right.
by cows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, the female moose, very dangerous.
Well, that's the
Incredibly
thing.
dangerous.
So I had to go, okay, if I'm like this with a cow, how am I going to feel when I am hunting with her and I run into a grizzly or a cougar or a moose? So she will be coming grouse hunting with me, but that's probably it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got to be really careful of that. But anyway, the point is she loves being outside, and she travels well. So not that many changes
So
yet.
what happens when you're taking care of your property? Do you just go cut down trees while she's taking a nap?
So we haven't got, that's where we go in, what are we into? That's where we go in a week. It's going to be a real big experience for me because I have a camp, obviously.
Right.
I have no running water. I have no power. It's a pretty simple camp.
And it's just going to be you two.
Yep. Charles will come in for 5 weeks, and her and I are there for, we've got July, and then we go back to Australia in August. I'm going to try to catch a marlin in Exmouth, and then September till January, we're in BC. I don't think we'll overwinter there. It's too cold.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's gonna be an experience. But I've spent the last 6 years cooking on a fire and jarring on a fire and making salsa on a fire, and so I think I can still make her food and stuff there. And it's going to be an experience. You'll have to touch base after a season of being up alone in camp with a baby, but I think we can do it.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. Well, those are big life changes. So also the podcast, I want to know what the podcast has done for you.
Everything.
Like, and why,
Yeah.
why the podcast? Why, like you went down the television road. It seems to me you're multi-talented. You could go down any road. Why is it that you're drawn to the podcast, and what has it done for you?
Okay, so the podcast came because of the television show. So as you know, you only have so much airtime, and I was doing these 2-hour long or an hour and a half long interviews, and they were being edited down to 3 minutes.
Mm.
And all of this amazing content was just being thrown away. So I thought, well, I'm going to capture that in a podcast. Also, I think there's always people are curious about, me. I mean, they're curious about everybody. They're curious about you, but people want to hear what you have to say away from the edits.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that I have the podcast for that. Like, if there's something I want to address, I no longer have to feel desperate to get onto film or onto a media
Right.
or a channel to
Right.
say it. I just go on the show and say what I have to say. And I really love that the podcast is just voices. No one's tuning in because they want to see my boobs. Like, they're not. They're tuning in because they want to hear, and they're not even necessarily tuning in to hear me, but they want to hear what my guests have to say. They're there for the right reasons.
Right.
That means a lot to me, knowing that there's an audience out there who are interested in hearing stories. That's really cool to me. And it's nothing more other than that they just truly want to hear the story.
Right. And what is your communication with your audience like?
That's a big question. In what way?
Well, I don't know. I mean, today you can communicate through social media. Somebody could send you an email. I don't know. There may be other ways to contact you through what you're doing, but I find that I did the television show for 13 years and received a few hundred emails.
Yeah.
I do the podcast for a few weeks and receive 1,000 emails.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Well, and the emails that I'm receiving are it's like a friend just wrote you an email.
Yeah.
Or like you're hearing from somebody that you hadn't heard from in a long time, or somebody has a real question. Like, not just like, love the show, man, really cool. Could I ever fish with you or something? Like more like, wow, I didn't realize that this is how you got into fishing. My son wants to do this. What do you suggest about these kind of things? Is it this that I heard on this one podcast, or is it this that I heard on another podcast? And I just find that there is a much deeper connection with the people that are listening than television, video, even articles or any of that.
Yeah, because it's a real connection. I feel like it's a little secret club. First of all, I take emails very seriously. Anybody who takes the time to email me gets a response.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to be pretty brutal in your email to me to not get a response. I've started answering Instagram questions, but not all of them, honestly, because it's too easy. It's too easy just to press a button to
Mhm.
send me a message. But if you take the time to email me, you've got my attention.
Right.
So I think my interaction is pretty high. But yeah, I feel like I'm part of a secret club. If you've listened to the show, then you know what I'm about. Like, there's no secrets. I just am what I am on the show. And yeah, they mean a lot. I kind of feel like they're sort of like family. I know
Yeah.
that sounds crazy because I've never seen half of them, but yeah, no,
But like, again, with Derek DeYoung, he was telling me like this when he would go to these summer art shows, and he was like, he used to do that, and he used to think that that was the way that he was going to make his living. And he would say that, he would be talking to somebody about his art, and then he would actually go and give it to them. And then there was this void inside of him. Like, I just put so much of myself into that. And now he's selling it to someone and it's going away. And he's like, wow, that was a piece of me like that. But the podcast is a piece of you. I mean, you're being vulnerable. You're opening up. The 1.5 to 2 hour format allows for your guest not to give their soundbite, but to give, the soundbite's over in 20 minutes. Then the good stuff comes at about an hour, I think. And then it allows people to actually get to know you in a way that they're not going to unless they went fishing with you. And even then, well, I don't know. That's why I think that some of the fishing podcasts and the hunting podcasts are particularly good, because these conversations are exactly the same conversations that I had on the boat for 8 to 10 hours
say,
for
it's
a
like
week.
standing on a flats boat.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to entertain this guy. So, you grew up in Michigan? Oh, cool. What do you do there?
Yeah, exactly.
And then it just goes from there for 10 hours.
Yeah.
And you find out that you turn out to, some of my best friends were my clients. The same thing with the podcast. But I just kind of, I didn't know what you thought about the podcast. Like,
I think it takes a lot of the curiosity. People are curious about me, I think. Like, is she the real deal? What's her story? Is she a bitch? People are curious. So it takes a lot of the curiosity out of it, because you listen to 100 episodes. Obviously, you're going to figure it out. But the deal for me is, you'll notice if you listen to a lot of episodes, I take a back seat a lot of the time because it's not about me. I come through when I have to, but it's really not about me. My deal is I want to get the stories of people who don't have platforms out there, because a lot of these guys, especially, like Ed Rice, I just podcasted Ed Rice the other day. Well, he's 80 years old. He doesn't have any of these accounts, and his story is just laying dormant within him. I want it out there to inspire other people, to educate other people, and to give us an idea of our history in the sport. And that's what I see my role as in this industry. I'm not here to entertain people. I'm not here to teach people. I'm not even here to inspire people, but I am here to preserve these stories. And that's what my podcast is about.
And do you have a long list of people that you want, or do you kind of add to it all the time?
I add to it all the time, but it's always long.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of good stories. There's a lot of interesting characters in the fishing world, I think.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of, I can go on about that, but I'm just going to leave it at that. There's a lot of characters. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I'm going to go over my notes a little bit and see if there was something else that I wanted to talk about. But I think that I've covered most of what I wanted to talk about. I did come across something that said you like to do a lot of permit fishing.
I love permit.
Do you? Is that your favorite?
No.
What do you like about permit fishing?
Oh, I love it. They're hard. I love a challenge,
Have you caught many?
Not many, but I've caught a few.
And have you caught any in Florida?
No. Actually, my one opportunity at a permit in Florida, my best friend was on the bow of the boat. I had gone to the bathroom, and I was literally peeing off the boat, and she was just holding my spot.
Oh.
And this enormous, like a legit 40-pound permit.
Mm-hmm.
And it haunts me.
So do you fish with Lorianne?
Only a couple times in Belize. Once, like back before.
And she fishes for permit a lot, right?
Yeah. She's all about it. She's got the obsession.
Yeah. I hope she'll be here. I saw her maybe last year. Yeah, I think it was last year.
Okay. Yeah, she should be here.
So where do you do your permit fishing?
In Exmouth, in Hinchinbrook, in Australia.
So Indo-Pacific permit.
Yeah, and Belize.
Mm-hmm. And Belize, so between the I think you're the only person that I know that has caught both.
Yeah.
So,
but although I haven't actually caught an Indo in Australia, I've only caught an Indo in the Seychelles.
Okay.
But yeah,
good enough.
Both.
So what do you see as the difference between the two fish?
I haven't caught enough to give you an honest answer on that.
Well,
I like the Indos because I like the yellow, right? I think that they're sexier.
Yeah, well, you can get a lot of yellow on the Florida fish too.
See, there you go.
Yeah, but they have a different nose. Like that.
Yeah,
that was the first thing I picked it up. I was like, "Whoa, that looks different."
Yeah,
they have a different nose.
I can't answer from like fight or anything. I'd have to ask you that.
I thought fight was extremely similar.
Do you find it's easier to see the blacktails?
Yes, but I only have my one Australian experience to draw from, so I don't have a lot of experience either. Where I was fishing for them, I saw them no problem. I'm sure that there are other places where the bottom is a little more yellow or whatever, and they just don't show up as well. Could be incredibly hard to fish for. Where I was, who knows? Maybe I just happened on a perfect day in a great place, and I caught a couple.
It sounds like permit
I
fishing.
just kind of thought that they weren't as hard as the Florida fish, but equally, I mean, I was equally as interested in them.
But that might not be the species. That's the fact that it's Florida, right? Do you think Florida fish have a lot of pressure?
Maybe.
They've seen everything? I'd be curious to see how you did somewhere remote for Pacific or for the...
I don't think that Florida fish have any more pressure than a lot of the fish that are around the resorts in Belize and other places like Ascension Bay and all of that. I mean, I know that those guys go there, and I don't know much about those places at all. But what I do know about destination fishing places is that usually you have a 5 or 10 gallon tank or whatever size tank is in that boat. If it's a Dolphin Super Skiff or whatever, maybe you got a 25-gallon tank. Within 25 gallons of that resort, they're getting hit every day, all the time. If you can get outside of that, you are going to find some fish that haven't been fished for very much. I think in the Florida Keys, there are a lot of guides, there are a lot of boats, but there are a lot of areas that don't get fished very much because it's such a giant area, right? It's 150 miles long. There's Oceanside all the way down. There's the backcountry. There's countless islands and flats and everywhere, and a lot of people fishing in a few places. There are certainly lots of places where you're fishing and you don't see anyone, and certain times of the year where you fish and you don't see anyone. And I think that they're definitely a smart fish, but I don't know. I don't think they get. I mean, certain permit get a lot of pressure, and they get way smarter and they don't like to be thrown at and they run off the flat real fast. But to me, it's more like the day. Like you get out there on the right day and they're all dumb. I mean, they really are. I've had, a world-class fly caster one day, world class, like in the Steve Ray Jeff class, like a guy that anyone would want to be as good as him. And he's putting it exactly where I tell him over and over and over and over and over again with no luck. They just won't eat it, right? They look at it, they won't eat it. And then the next day, the wind blows 10 miles an hour harder, and maybe the temperature goes up 3 degrees. And I got somebody from Ohio that has literally never held a fly rod in their hand and can roll cast 30 feet, and he catches one. I don't know. I mean, they're a funny fish.
When you figure it out, let me know.
I'm
Because,
not going to.
but I think that's why we like them.
Yeah. Well, no doubt. And, I keep thinking that there's going to be some kind of somebody's going to come up with a fly. Somebody's going to come up with a technique. Somebody's going to come up with something that really all of a sudden you're catching a lot. But I don't know. But because
But
like,
we don't want that. It would be like
well,
your queen fishing day in Australia. You don't want to get bored.
yeah, but I don't get bored catching on crabs.
You don't.
No, not at all.
Even if you were catching as many queenfish as you were, you'd still be okay
I love
catching.
the permit.
Okay, so what is it about the fight of the permit? I mean, they don't jump like queenfish do.
It's not the fight.
It's the fish.
It's the bite.
Oh.
For me, it's the seeing them, watching them come over. What I like about a crab is if you do it right, you're going to catch every one.
And you don't get bored.
Mm.
That's amazing. I've
No, I
never
don't
caught one
do
on a
it
crab.
right
Maybe I'll have to do that.
Well, you absolutely, if you want to catch more on
I
fly,
know, I
you
need to learn
should
the and that's
absolutely catch them on
I
crab, because
tell
how do you
people that.
know what they're going to how do you know how to get that out of the fish?
I know. I think about it all the time because how can you
we
fish
talk
for
about it
something
on
if
this
you don't know the
podcast a
behavior?
lot, but when you're fishing with live crabs, it's super crucial that you keep that crab alive, right? Like when the crab has been thrown 20 times and then your client leaves it out on the deck of the boat and it gets real tired and you put it in the water and it barely moves. You know how they look at it? You make a perfect cast in front of that permit and it goes down and the permit comes over and goes, yeah. And it looks at it just exactly like it does a fly. Like, nope.
Even if it's just tired?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
That is amazing.
That's why a lot of people hit me with this argument of, oh, well, if you just rubbed a little crab juice on it. I'm like, rub crab juice all over it. Try it. Do it. It still doesn't move. Like, it doesn't look like what they eat. It can smell like what they eat, but I'll throw a dead crab at a permit all the time because now they're all dead in the live well. You've used all the good ones, and the ones that are left are dying or they're dead or whatever. You can throw it out there, and man, they got to be really on the job to eat that. Really on the job. They don't like it. They don't want it. They're not interested in it. What they are interested in is if that crab, especially if it has pinchers, and it is fighting, and those pinchers are up like this, and its legs are going like this. Bam! They eat it like you
You're
can't
getting
believe.
me so excited to go permit fishing.
But I mean, they are all over it. They come from on the other side of the room, come up and come up in the water, and then come down, and then mud comes out and it's streaming out their gills because they pinched it to the bottom so much that there's absolutely no possible way that thing was getting away. They come up and they've got, they come up and mud streaming off their head and they're just so happy and they're just like this and the crab's biting them on the lip and it's just awesome. And
I have never experienced anything like that.
Because you're fly fishing for them and they don't want it because it doesn't look like what they are eating, right? And so you can catch them on fly, and it's amazing when you do, and it's super awesome. And the best fish that I've ever caught is a fish where you throw the fly out there in front of it, and it eats something, and it eats something, and it eats something, and then it eats your fly, not unlike a trout. Like it eats a real one, it eats a real one, it eats a real one, mend, it eats a real one, and it without altering its body at all, like not thinking about it, that doesn't do anything for me. It's when the fish has a certain rhythm and you get in that rhythm and then it's It just eats your fly exactly like it ate the others. That means you had the exact right fly, the exact right size, the exact right color, the exact right presentation. It didn't have to deviate out of its line one inch. You did it exactly right. That gets me going.
Would a permit eat a crab off the top?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. They'll also eat a dry fly.
So have you done that?
Yeah.
Have you
Yeah.
caught them like that?
Yeah. One. Mm-hmm.
My,
On the
my
flat.
brain right now is just
Now there are
spinning out of
guys
control.
like my friend Simon Becker. I think he catches a whole lot of them like that.
No.
And there are guys that, like on those days where I was saying I don't really like to permit fish, it's really slick calm. A lot of those guys will go to a channel and the permit will get in there and they will actually be eating stuff off the surface. And then they get up tide and roll this down, not unlike a salmon presentation where, they get this to go right through them and maybe wake it a little bit. And they're having some really good luck like that. But again, it's very technical and it's very, very, very challenging because if the line gets there first, then that's no good. But I'm not good at that kind of fishing, but there are people that are, and they're, they're the real deal. But what gets me is I like to catch any fish in a way that it's totally natural. Like if you get out to a reef and you start throwing live pilchards in the water, and the kingfish shoots through there and eats a live pilchard, and there's no hesitation, and he does it, and he turns out like this, and you throw your fly in there, and the thing kind of comes up and looks at it and looks at it and looks at it. It's like you might catch him. You didn't really fool him. You might be able to get him to eat. But when he comes in there exactly like he did for that pilchard, that's when you fooled him. That's when your fly was exactly right. That's when you were moving it the way that the pilchard was moving. That's when you have gotten out of the fish its natural behavior. Same with trout fishing, or just, when you throw a grasshopper out in front of a trout and it doesn't look quite right, and they stand on their tail like this and float backwards for 6 feet looking at it, they're like, man, I don't know.
It's interesting to hear that's what makes you tick, though.
Yeah, but
so it's all
like,
about being natural to you.
Yeah, and getting, I don't like it when you throw something out there necessarily and the fish has been, eating like this, and you throw something out there and it just reaches over there and just kills it.
You don't
it's
like that?
Not necessarily.
So
I
you
mean,
just
it's fun
don't
to
like
catch them.
breaking the rhythm.
But no, what I like to do is observe the fish in its natural behavior and see that it is very happily eating something, whether it's a trout or a permit or whatever. And I want to throw out there and I want to do it exactly right so that the fish doesn't deviate from that behavior that it is doing, and it just continues to rise in that same rhythm, and there's your fly and it just eats it just exactly like the natural. I mean, that just tells me that it's the right fly choice, size, shape, color. It's the right. He didn't see that it had any tippet. Like you mended well, you made a good cast, everything's going perfectly, and there's no reason why the fish wouldn't eat it, right?
Yeah.
But when they have to deviate or they stand on their head, it's like,
it's not the same.
Something's not right. Like you didn't do it right. You didn't pick the right fly. It has micro drag. Something is wrong. It's passable. It's like getting a 71
I was just
on
going to
your
say
test.
you could have had an A, but you got a C.
But that's what drives a crazy, when you watch a lot of people catch fish, you're like, kind of cheap, I mean, happy for you.
Yeah.
You're just, it's what's going on in the guy's head. You're just kind of like, could do better.
Actually, I'll give you that. I may have had some of those thoughts
Yeah,
when I used to guide.
but that's the thing about bone fishing with a shrimp and spin casting with a crab. If you do it right, they should eat it. And so if you're getting refusals, you didn't do it right. So you can improve your casting. You can improve your technique. You can improve your leader situation. You can use a smaller hook. You can take better care of your bait. You can do something to get that natural, eat out of that fish. And whether that's bait or fly, it doesn't really matter to me. They're just tools to me. Like I like to bait fish as much as I like to fly fish, and I like to fly fish as much as I like to bait fish, and I like to fish with lures as much as I like to do either one of those, as long as it's happening natural.
That's so interesting to hear
Yeah.
that your
It's
viewpoint on that.
idiosyncrasy.
Yeah.
And people just call it weird, I guess.
No,
But
it
anyway,
sounds great.
do you have any of those? Like, is there a perfect fish for you? Is there a perfect presentation? Is there a way? Are you just happy to catch a fish? Like you roll up to a riffle and you make a you're not even casting. You're just getting some line out there. Is
It's
that good for your one fish a day?
No, but it's really tough because, like, you talk about, let's say New Zealand, you see a trout. I've seen trout take without breaking the rhythm, like you're talking
Yep.
about that you like. I've seen them take horribly presented flies just like that, as
Yep.
if it was natural. So I don't put as much merit on the skill. Like I've seen fish take in that sort of same rhythm that they were taking naturals on a bad fly, on a bad presentation. So it's hard for me to be like, I just saw you do a 71 presentation and you just got rewarded with it like you just got an A+.
Yeah.
Like I know that was a C presentation.
Yeah.
So it just depends. No, for me, it's all about, I don't know. I really don't. It's not about catching the fish. Honestly,
What is it about?
Finding the fish.
Mm.
It's not about catching it. It's about finding it. I love exploring and then trusting my gut that I'll find it there. And then when I find it there, my job is done. I'll try to catch it. Sure, why not? I'd love to see it up close. I'd love it in my hands more than anything. I'd love to feel it. But no, I just more need to find it. It's there. So I want to get on the flats, find the permit, get on, into the mountains, find
Well, that's how it's super rewarding for a guide in an area like Louisiana or the Florida Keys or one of these places where you could just explore endlessly for the rest of your life. And you go home and you're doing the homework and you're like, if they were there, then they should be here.
Yes.
By looking at this chart, this looks like it does this little thing and the water should come in here like
now
this.
You're talking.
So now if I'm to look over here and I see the same similar kind of thing, I guess I would be looking for an incoming tide. All this is going through your head. And so then you go, tomorrow I'm going there at noon.
Now you're talking what gets me ticking.
Right.
So when you do that, I can feel myself getting excited.
Yeah.
I love looking at maps. What's the gradient like there? Where's the entry there? What's the estuary? Where's the saltwood? That gets me off.
Yeah. And then you go there and they're there. And for a fishing guide, you don't want to catch them because tomorrow you got a client. I'm coming back and they're going to be there and I'm not going to bother these fish. I'm just going to ease out of here. And that's what we used to do in the redfish tournaments. That was the hardest thing is you would find the meat and you wouldn't even make a cast.
Yes. And then you bring the clients back and they...
No, you were the client. You were fishing for $50,000 and you were the client.
Right.
and you would come back the next day and they wouldn't be there. Because we didn't know enough about redfish in Louisiana to know how the salinity affects them and everything pushes them out. But I mean, countless times you think that you're gonna win. Like they're right there. And if the tournament was happening today, that's what we're looking for. And then you come back tomorrow and there's no sign of them. I don't know, but that's all the obsession. That's what drives the obsession, I think, is the fact that sometimes they're not there when there should be. And sometimes they don't bite when they should. Yeah. When everything seems to be right and they don't bite, that's what makes you go back.
It's that girl in high
otherwise
school.
Otherwise it'd be the queenfish in the riffle.
That's right.
You get bored.
If it was too easy, we wouldn't want it.
Right. Well, I think this is a good place to stop, and I want to thank you very much for sitting down. I was not disappointed. You are a very interesting person.
I'm sorry. I wish I had more to add. I feel like I would love to take both of our podcasts and merge them together.
Oh, we can. I'm sure that we could. Let's do it. Let's do a part 1 and part 2 on both channels, and people can listen to both of them.
Could do. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
So tell everybody how they can find you.
So my podcast is called Anchored with April Vokey, and it's on iTunes, Stitcher, same as all your stuff. And these days, probably just aprilvokey.com.
That's the hub. That has your writing and podcasts and everything.
There's about to be a lot more writing happening. So it's pretty bleak on the blog front these days, but that's going to be changing soon. Yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations on the biggest step. What was the biggest step in my life is having children.
Thank you.
The most rewarding. You are in for the greatest adventure of your life.
Thanks.
I can assure you of that. If there's one thing I can guarantee, you are in for the greatest adventure of your life. No one could tell you how it's going to go. It'll be different every day, and every moment is worth it.
It has been so far.
Well, good luck to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
And we'll do it again. Well, thanks, April, for being on the podcast, and I hope that you really got a lot out of that one. I certainly did. April is an intriguing figure in the fishing world, and between her podcast and mine, I really felt like I got to know her quite a bit better than I did before, and it was fun. It was really fun. She does a great job on her podcast. She's an excellent interviewer, and also be watching for me to appear on her podcast, Anchored with April Vokey. All right, guys, until next week, let me know how you're liking the podcast. You can tag us on Instagram, Tom_Rowland, or Saltwater Experience on Instagram. That is the best way to get in touch with me on social media. And the best way to get in touch with me also is the direct line that we have set up, podcast@Saltwater Experience. You can hear all past episodes on iTunes by searching Tom Rowland Podcast, or you can go to saltwaterexperience.com/podcast to see all of the episodes that we've published so far. Until next week, thanks. See ya.